Okay, so I have just a piece of drawing paper here. For rubbings, I wouldn't use anything thicker than drawing paper, or it's not really going to pick up the texture. And then the most common question I get asked by students is, well, what do I do the rubbings with? So crayons work really great because they're waxy and they don't just crumble like your pastels would. I really wouldn't use your chalk pastels, especially if they're really soft. They're just going to make a mess if you try to do a rubbing. So whenever you do rubbings, you want to have something that's really hard that is going to retain that mark that you're trying to rub over. And usually at this point, I tell the students to just around the school and try to find interesting textures to rub. Usually the surface does need to be hard too, because if it's like a fabric or something that's soft, it's not going to pick up the texture. So there at the school, there's a lot of like mosaic tile work that makes really great rubbings. There's drains, on the floor, and there's manholes outside in the parking lot that have writing. Outside of a lot of the classroom doors, there's letters and numbers, or there's braille, and then also the letters and numbers are usually raised. So the bottoms of our shoes, the walls sometimes have texture on them. So if you look around, you'll find there's a lot of textures. Like sometimes the back of chairs will have patterns on them. So you can use whatever medium you want, but I prefer to use the crayons, and then the China markers that I told you about at the beginning that were optional. They work really well too because they're kind of like a crayon. And I don't think I showed you how to sharpen these. And I've had students get these before and they're like, I didn't really know what to do with it. So when you get them, there's a little string that is at the top. And sometimes I'll have students, they'll pull that all the way down, and then that's going to ruin the whole thing. You'll just end up with a little tiny skinny crayon. So what you have to do is peel this string down. I would only pull it down. You'll see there's like little striations. So I usually just pull it down through about 2 of those. Sometimes it's kind of hard once if it's a new one. And then if you pull like kind of at one of those striations, then you'll see it will start to unravel. And that's how you sharpen it. So you unravel that paper, and then you have more of the material exposed. And so they come in different colors, but these are kind of fun to do gesture drawings with because they are just like a wacky crayon, but you can kind of control the pressure and create some value as well. You just can't erase it when you work with it because it is wax. But Sharpie makes these as well as some other companies too, and they're really inexpensive. They're just kind of like a grown-up version of a crayon. But I feel like, do we ever really grow up? So I still use crayons too. And then the other thing you could use, this is a carpenter crayon, which is, you can get them at like Home Depot. They're just like big crayons that carpenters will use to mark wood and things so that if it's raining, it's waterproof. And then your hard charcoal. So if you have the compressed charcoal and you have one that's really hard, that will work because it will, hopefully it has enough binder, and then you could draw or blend. And you could use your graphite too. But if you're wanting to blend and do things on top of it, if you use crayon, that's not really going to mix well with charcoal. So you have to kind of think about like, what material am I going to use over it? And maybe kind of experiment that way. So I have a few things that have texture that I'll show you to rub. One, this is just a shoe, and you can see on the bottom of the shoe, I did wipe it off with the sanitizing wipe, but this shoe has like a really cool pattern on it, so I could put my paper on top of it. And then using the side, you see, and rubbing it, it creates that texture. And so it's kind of fun, and you could repeat it over and over if you want. Here I have, this is a ceramic little plate that one of my coworkers made, and it's got like this carved texture in it. So I thought it might be kind of fun to see what that would look like. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you can't always tell, what it is that you rubbed, but it'll give you interesting marks. And then here, this is just like a little wire mesh. I don't know what it's from. I just found it in my garage. And so you can see it made some interesting marks, and you could repeat these things over and over. And if you want to use different colors, you can. But just remember, this is college, so sometimes I'll have students, they get out the crayons to do this, and it gets kind of, crafty looking. So whatever you can find, you may even go outside. Just remember, be careful. This is a stencil that I've had for years that I've spray painted on top of it. It's really thick, so I thought I would try to see if I could get a rubbing off of it. And I know we all are probably stressed out and feeling very isolated through all of this. So, anything like this that's kind of getting aggression out, that's sort of an experiment. These things are fun, to me. So this might be kind of a good stress reliever for you as well. And this is just another little stencil that I've used for spray painting. So you can see in a matter of seconds, really, I've got a whole page of at least 3 different rubbings. So now I could do whatever I want, on top of it. So I could use other media, I could use ink, whatever, I want. And I could totally pretend that this is not even here. So let's say I wanted to make this a portrait or some surrealistic looking design. I could just start kind of doodling and using my imagination on it and just kind of see what comes out. So you can see I started to draw a profile. And what's weird, I think what made me do that is this little mark here kind of looked like an eye, like a closed eye. So, what I do, sometimes I don't want to plan things out. I just want to have fun. So maybe then I could come in and color with some red over this. Here I've got these are some watercolor brush pens that I have. And so since this was all wax, I should be able to use these on top of the wax and it still show through. So maybe I want to come in and add some color. It's really up to you, whatever you want to do at that point. But I want it to look like a finished drawing, and I want to be able to see the rubbings coming through in places. And then I also want to be able to see, a drawing of some sort on top of it as well. So it can be more abstract, but I just want to see more than just rubbings. It needs to have something else on top of it as well. And it could be a fun way for you to start working. I've done a whole series of work like this before where I just will fill a page with rubbings and several pages, and then that's what I'll create my paintings or drawings on top of, just using those as the surface. So that is the rubbing exercise, the assignment that you'll be creating for your portfolio. So you have a lot of freedom to really do whatever you would like with that.